Alright guys, so welcome back to the last part of the smoke series tutorial, and in this part we are going to render out our smoke and we are going to save it to the disk, and we are also going to save the cache and everything. Okay, so we are already done with the effect. Like we have used three types of noises, two types of noises. Then we have used vortex confinement to add to preserve the details, and then we have added disturbance to add small micro details to the smoke. And if you haven't seen the part like previous chapters, just make sure you go to the the playlist and just check out all the tutorials. Alright, so this is the last part, and it's cool that you have made till here. Okay, and now let us just go ahead and start caching out our simulation first. Okay, so in order to cache out the simulation, first of all we need to bring all the data from DOP.NET to the SOP.NET to the geometry level, because caching something is more of a it's a kind of non-dynamic process, so we need to do it in the SOP level. Okay, so let me add a DOP.io. so this is known as DOP, you can say it like in out kind of thing. And what I can do is I can just go here, do a control C, and just paste the network over here. And now you can just you can click on this preset and you can just choose Pyro. So it will give you a lot of shit, so we don't really need it. So we don't need fuel, we don't need color, we don't need heat, we don't need temperature. So let's say if we were making some explosion, yeah, we would definitely be requiring temperature in order to shade the fire, but we don't have to shade the fire, so no need of temperature, no need of rest and rest too. And also so this velocity is quite important, but we don't need it because I'm not going to render motion blur in our smoke, because I don't have a supercomputer yet. So maybe if someday I buy a supercomputer, I'm going to render the velocity also in Mantra. Okay, so I'm not going to use any motion blur. So let's say if you are doing some other kind of fluid simulation where you have to do foam simulation, so it's important to have a velocity. Or let's say if you want to upres your smoke simulation later, you can have this velocity field, but I don't need that. I just need the density itself, and that is it. Alright, so if I just click on this button, it's going to start importing the cache. And if I just click on this play, so you'll see it's importing all the data from our DOP level. Okay, now what I can do is I can add a volume compress. So this volume compress is going to right now the simulation is having lots of details, so the simulation is completely raw right now and we don't really need all that details in our simulation, especially when we are caching out, because now so when it simulates, it keep tracks of lot of data, but when we are going to render it, we just need the density field, so we can reduce that data. So you can just go over here and you can click on this recompress, and make sure you click on this update compression settings, and you can click on this use 16-bit float. So if you have been to my flip tutorial series, you might have seen we used fluid compress over there, and here we are going to use volume compress. So this is going to save a lot of disk space. Okay, and then that's it. Now we can just use this file cache node. Okay, now we can just cache out our smoke simulation into our disk. So just go over here in this file part, from constructed change it to explicit. So this will just change into the previous method of saving the cache, and which I feel is little bit more efficient, and it's not that complex. I don't know, this new method is quite complex for me. It makes a lot of folders which I don't really like, so I can just change it to the explicit method. And I can just click on this geometry file, and maybe I can just go to the desktop, and maybe I'll just name this smoke cache and enter, and then I'll just write $F. So it's going to save for all the frames, and that is it. Now I can just click onto this save to disk, and my final resolution is somewhere around it's 0.04, so you can just set it to that value. Alright, so that is it. Let's click on save to disk, and as soon as it saves to the disk, I'll just resume from there. Alright, so the simulation is done, the caching is done, and now I can just scrub on my timeline, and I can just load my cache, the smoke cache. And if I just go to the frame 65, we will have our smoke over here in the viewport. Yeah, that is looking really good, and maybe I'll just look at it from here, and I'll just choose a good angle from where I can start rendering this stuff. So I think Okay, so I think this will look just fine. Okay, yeah. So what I can do is I can just create a camera from here. From this view I can just create a camera. Okay, alright, so I can just control click this camera and it will just set a new camera from this view. And let's say if I want to change the camera, I can just click on this button, or I can just press Alt and reframe my view, reframe my camera, and this is like looking good, and that's it. Alright, so now it's time to start rendering our stuff, rendering our smoke. So first of all, I'll add a pyro bake volume. So basically this is like fastest way to shade your like smoke and fires. So if I add this pyro bake volume, so this is like a pre-built shader. I mean, it's not pre-built, we have to change stuff, but this is like on the SOP level itself, so you don't need to go into this material network and all that stuff. Alright, so as you can see, my viewport is like struggling to keep up with the smoke because it's quite high resolution and I'm having a shitty graphics card. So I can add a volume visualization. Okay, so this node is going to help us in bringing the resolution of the smoke, I mean the viewport resolution of the smoke, to a really low number. So if you click on this volume visualization, and if you click on this maximum res, so this says like maximum visualization resolution. So if you just decrease it, like you will just have a very low resolution looking volume over here. Okay, alright, so that's it. Now I'll just click on this pyro bake volume, and I'm not going to click, I can just click on this button and you will have your high resolution smoke back. So let's say if you want to scroll in the viewport, you can just click on this volume visualization and you can easily scroll like this, and once you are done you can go back to the camera and just click on this one. Okay, so you'll see like something weird happens when we add this pyro bake volume. So basically like the shadow, there are like no shadows in the smoke. So this is some viewport bug. If I put the shadow color to 0, we will have the shadows, but then the problem is like we won't be having shadows in the render. So it's better to keep it to 0 and just see how it's looking in the rendering. So I'll increase the density scale. Maybe I'll put it to 4 or 5. Maybe 4 is fine as of now, and I'll put the shadow color back to 1 because otherwise it won't have any shadow in the rendering. This is some just viewport bug. Okay, alright, so let's just go ahead and let's just start rendering. Okay, so I will add an environment light. So HDRI is like best place to start for the rendering of anything. So you can just get lot of free HDRIs from Polyhaven, and I can just click on this accept. Okay, so we have the HDRI over here, and now I'm just going to go into this render view. Okay, and this is like one of my previous render. So let me just render it once again. I click on this output. Okay, and let's add a mantra node over here. So so either you can just click on the render button. So okay, you can also just click on this render button and it will just add your one mantra IPR node over here, and now it's going to render your smoke. So initially you'll see it's going to be quite slow because right now the resolution settings, they are like set to a very high number. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to pause this and I'll go to this mantra IPR, and in this rendering I'll change the max samples to 3 and noise level to something like 0.5 as of now. This is just temporary, and I can click on this preview button and I can just render it. Okay, so we have got something like this, and right now the lighting is coming from back, and let's just change the angle of the lighting to like make it look more interesting. Okay, so here if I let's say if I type 30, so I'm just trying to change the rotation. So maybe okay, so the sun is going in that direction. Okay, I'll just put maybe something like -30. Yeah, so this is what I want. So things look interesting when they have like this kind of fall off. So like one side is like being lit, and then there's a kind of gradient. So this area is lit, and then we have this area where we have this shadow. So there's a lot of depth in the scene now. So let's say if I put it to -60, so this will look really bad because right now everything is just looking flat, and the lighting is like completely from the front angle, and that doesn't really makes it look interesting. So maybe I'll put it to -30, and that will just work for our case. Okay, all right, so now let's go and play with our Pyro bake volume. Okay, so in order to make it look good, what I first of all, I'll just select some this area. So you can press shift and you can drag your mouse button to isolate an area, and I'll just work on this thing. Okay, so I can just double click on this Pyro bake volume, so you can just go inside. And because there are some controls which you don't have on the upper level, so let's dive here, and we have this absorption color and we have this smoke color. So you can just leave the smoke color as it is. I like to shade the smoke with absorption color more. So this is like completely for artistic purpose. You can just have the absorption color and you can just do whatever you want. But what I'm going to show you is like really cool. So if I just go over here, and if you, let's say if you click on this color, so let's say if I click on this green color, and you'll see something like this. So if I make it little bit less saturated, you'll see we will see two types of colors. So like the front facing color is like green, and like on the edges it's getting absorbed and like it's scattering and doing all that stuff. So how do we make it like on the edges, how can we make it like something like bluish? So what we see in the trailer, how can we make something like that? And you might have also seen in the Houdini websites, they have that bluish kind of color in the like bluish kind of tint on the edges. So a good rule of thumb is like the colors are like always inverted. So let's say if I choose something like blue, it's going to give me something like orange and yellowish. So if you want something like blue, you can click on this orange, you can go to the orange color, and you'll see we will have this blue scattering in the background. So you can just come over here and maybe desaturate it a bit, and you'll see we will get something like this. And maybe I can make it a little bit more reddish. So maybe I can just rotate a wheel over this side, so it will be a little bit more orangish, and yeah, it's going to look something like this. Then once again, if you're happy with it and like it's looking good, I can just go back, and maybe I can increase the density scale. So maybe if I put it to 8 or something, the smoke is going to look lot dense now. Okay, and maybe if I select this side, and let's see how it's looking. Okay, yeah, so we are getting some really nice colors. Okay, and you can also like increase the intensity of the light if you want. So if I go to this environment light, and if I increase the intensity, so we will have brighter colors over here. So maybe that's a little bit too much, so maybe 1.35. yeah, and what else I can do is like there's one thing that you can do. You can go to the output, and in this mantra node, if you go to this limit section, right now the volume limit is set to 0. You can put it to 1, and this way we will have some internal scattering, and we won't see that solid smoke. Okay, so now I'm just going to render one frame, and let's see how it looks. And what I'll do is I'll just go to this mantra, and in this sampling I can put the noise level to a really low value, to let's say maybe 0.05, and let's just render and see how it's looking. Alright guys, so we have got something like this, and I think it's like looking really good. And alright, so there's something which I want to change. I mean, right now it's looking a little bit too light for my taste, so maybe I can make it more dark. I think it could have like little bit more depth to it, especially like some shadow stuff. Okay, so I'll just go back to the OBJ level, and in my Pyro bake volume, maybe I'll increase the shadow density from 1 to 2, and I'll just select this area, and let's see how it's looking. And yeah, that is exactly what I want. And now I think it's looking really good. We can see a lot of depth. Maybe it's too much, so I can put it to like maybe 1.7. And yeah, I think that looks perfect. Alright, so let me just do a final render, and then let's see how this turns out. Alright guys, so this is been rendered, and just look at it how beautiful it looks. Like all that scattering on these, like this subsurface scattering and the smoke and all that tint of bluish color. Maybe we can desaturate it a little bit, and I mean just look at it how beautiful it looks. Not just the rendering but also the details and everything, and that is the power of Houdini, and that is the reason why it's being like replacing all other softwares. Okay, alright, so that is it. And now let's just go ahead, and I can just render out my complete sequence. So in order to do that, just make sure you always have a camera in your scene. If you don't have a camera, like it will just throw up mantra will just throw an error. So now you can just go into your output and just go to your images, change this valid frame range from current frame range to render frame range. Okay, you can set your camera over here, and you can select your you can change this how much, like this, like starting and the end frame over here. Okay, and in this output device, like here we have this option for the output picture. You can click on this one and just go over here, and maybe I'll make a new folder. I'll call it smoke. I'm not really caring about like the pipeline right now. I'm just, so this is my computer, I'll do whatever I want. Okay, so I can put just $1 and I'll write .exr. So because I wanted to save it in the format of .exr, so make sure you write an extension, and that is it. Now that's it, fingers crossed. And now I can just click on render to disk, and it's just going to open a window, and it's going to save everything to our disk, and then we can just bring it to After Effects on Nuke, and we'll have our cool looking smoke. So that is it, and that is the end of our smoke simulation course. We went from like basically nothing to this level in just 5 parts, and the tutorials were not like more than 20 minutes long. Okay, so this is it, and make sure you head to our website and you can look at our Houdini courses which we are providing. So it's a live 7 days free demo class, and then you can see if you want to join, and we cover all the aspects of Houdini, the Pyro, the RBD, and flip, vellum, and particles, and all that stuff. Okay, so that is it, and if you like the content, just make sure you subscribe to the channel, and that is it. Bye bye, see you in the next one.